Now you can just write in and take a picture with your phone.
All right, it is 7 o'clock, and we would like to start this meeting this evening. I want to welcome everybody out here for this December 13th meeting. Let's start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our first item of business is a reorganization of the commission that we do at the end of every year. So our first item of business is to consider the mayor for the ensuing year.
I move that Leroy Commissioner Kane is our mayor for the upcoming year.
Okay.
I would second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. Second item of business is consider the vice mayor for the ensuing year. Oh, we're switching now? Okay.
Thank you, Clint.
Thank you.
I'll say if you want, I can switch them when you're done if you'd like.
I'll switch now.
Okay.
Everybody has to do the switcheroo tonight.
Well, before we move on to vice mayor, I think we need to formally recognize that Mayor McBroom has done just a phenomenal job here. And I think you just deserve a rousing round of applause here from all of us, because I think you really did a fabulous job. So
Thank you.
thank you very much for all the extra effort that you put into in all ways. Okay, now for the vice mayor.
I nominate Commissioner Rod Cry for vice mayor.
I second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Commissioner Cry is now the vice mayor. And then we have
We need
a,
to switch.
do we have to?
You got to come here tonight.
Oh, geez. Look at this, chairs.
I knew I wasn't going to be here long.
Isn't there some background music for this musical chair business?
You got to keep it back for the rest of the night.
I do? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be a good steward.
I always wanted to sit down here.
I think he just pulled it out. Oh, there it is.
Kind of like this end.
Here we go.
I'm glad to join your neighborhood.
Okay, first order of business is the consent agenda. All of you have looked at it, and do we have approval?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is passed. Then we move on to the regular agenda, item number 10, which is the budget amendment hearing. We can just guess who that is.
This is a good reason to have a budget amendment is when we have more money coming in and we have to purchase more commodity to keep selling it. So this is a good thing. The following funds need to be amended for the 2022 budget year. The airport fund to increase expenditures for Jet A and 100 low-lead fuel purchases due to cost and to higher sales volume. And the golf course fund to increase expenditures in commodities and supplies for increased costs and usage, and capital outlays being increased for needed improvements. The total increase in airport expenditures will be covered by increased revenue due to high usage of our airport for refueling, and the total increase in golf course expenditures will be covered by increased revenue due to high play volume. Airport fund will have an increase of $200,000, and the golf course will increase $100,000.
Okay.
I move we approve the 2022 published budget amendments.
Can I,
Have a public hearing?
we have to open the public hearing for a moment, please.
Okay, we will now open the public hearing. Anybody have anything to say about that? Okay, then we will close the public hearing. And now I think we can entertain a motion.
I still move.
I second.
Approve
Okay,
it, yeah.
there's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it has been approved.
Thank you.
Item number 11, we're going to receive a petition from Ron Harder requesting de-annexation of property at Southwest 24th and Old Main and determine the next steps.
I can cover that one if you like, and I see Mr. Harder's here. If he wants to speak to it, I'll just tee it up for the commission real quick. We've done a number of annexations in the city recently. De-annexation obviously is the converse of that. Takes property, it removes it from the city limits. Process starts with a petition that's filed by the landowner, which it has. That petition's in your agenda packet. The city commission doesn't make a decision tonight whether to de-annex or not, simply receives the petition. Then the state statute provides that a public hearing can be heard after notice by either the planning commission or the city commission. So the city commission tonight would be asked to receive the petition and then determine who would hear that petition. It would be suitable for the city commission to hear that. If it went to the planning commission, it would be in the form of a recommendation, like a zoning change. So I think the applicant wants to speak about it. At the conclusion of that, you could consider receiving the petition and then determining that either the city commission or the planning commission hears it, and then staff would go forward with the notice procedural requirements and bring it back to you at a future meeting for a public hearing and decision.
Thank you, Chris. Well, first of all, let me say that I'm a fan of Newton and a supporter of all things Newton, and I appreciate what you guys do here month after month behind the scenes to make the tough decisions to help us have a better community. So I'm not trying to take this out of the city to fight the city or to deprive the city of taxation. It's a short-term possible solution to of trying to farm and raise wheat with the neighborhood community rules and have to choose between breaking those rules or raising wheat. And it's just not compatible sometimes to farm in the city limits. So in the long term, this will be back in the city limits. My son is working with me now, and we hope to have more land to annex into the city in the years to come, but we've got to survive the short term to make it to the long term, and this is kind of a business decision to survive. If you would have other ideas of how to do this, to how to abide by the neighborhood rules and still convince the geese to leave some for me, I'm open to those suggestions.
Yeah, I've gone out and looked at this, and it seems to me that is, as adults, we ought to be able to sit down and figure out something. If you're taking it out so that you can keep the geese off of your property, because I've seen what geese do. They don't eat the tops off. They pull it out from the roots, which is really not good. But I would like to explore the possibility of having some type of an ordinance or something like that implemented into it would be, making sure it was safe and that you're only shooting in certain directions. There's got to be some common sense to figuring out how to keep those geese off of there, and I think we should figure out a way that you wouldn't have to go through the process of de-annexation and then having to put it back in at some point in time.
Well, that'd be great if we could. I'm just curious to know, I just thought of this, but how many fields are in the city limits, like 40 acres or more, how many places, I don't even know, how many places are faced with issues like this?
I don't have any idea.
You mean that are tillable or that are
Yeah,
farmland?
tillable
Yeah.
cropland in the city limits. I wouldn't think there'd be very many, you know, that,
Yeah.
there'd be some like at Summer Crossing and in the golf course probably that are in the city
Yeah.
limits. But I wouldn't think there'd be very many spots where this would even be applicable.
I used to hunt geese quite a bit. They're creatures of habit. They seem to go to the same place.
And for some reason, they
Till
just
it's
love
gone.
that place.
Yeah.
They can, even across the creek to the south, which is not in the city limits, they avoid it like the plague. And they all come over there. I think they want to be good citizens.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, what do you guys think?
I'm in agreement with Rod. I live just 3 houses north of 24th Street there, and a lot of years when I put up my Christmas lights, I can sit on my roof and watch the guys down there hunting or in that general vicinity. I specifically have never experienced it to be bad or anything like that, but I'm a hunter as well, so I understand the difference. But I'm in support of whatever we need to do to fix it so that it could be used to control the goose population there on that ground. And I don't know if an ordinance is the best way or de-annexation. Maybe the city could recommend what path forward on that, but I'm up for whatever we need to do to fix it to allow the geese population to be controlled there, because there is a lot, and sometimes they poop on my truck, so.
What I'm hearing is for city staff to come back with potential alternatives. However, you still have the decision whether to go forward, at least in terms of teeing up the de-annexation. So I don't know if that is enough that you want to withdraw it, or you would like to keep this on path, because it requires 20-day notice, and there's some steps. So it's really a decision for you in terms of whether you want to do two paths or you want to withdraw it.
If there'd be some alternatives, we could put it on hold. It's not
Table
something
the petition. So, yeah, that you could just table the matter per the request of the applicant.
Sure.
And we will not notice up a public hearing. We will try and come back with an overview of the issues at least. And then if those aren't suitable for all involved, then I assume the petition would come back and we would consider a rehearing.
Ron, while you're here this evening, do you know approximately how far those guys or gals would hunt from where that is to the road? Do you know about how far that is, foot-wise?
About 300 feet.
About 300 feet, okay. I'm just wondering, as far as what Rod's recommendation was, if there is an ordinance that we could create that did allow hunting in the city limits if it was X amount of feet from a house with a smaller gauge shotgun, or a certain gauge shotgun or smaller. I mean, for instance, a 20 gauge shotgun is not going to cause harm to someone at 300 feet away. We just know that. And most guys don't want to hunt with a 12 gauge or 20 gauge, but a 12 gauge isn't going to cause harm either. I don't believe at 300 feet. Now, I'm no ballistics expert, but I've shot plenty of 12 gauge, and I can tell you that beyond 60 or 75 feet, I can't hit anything, and I'm not that bad of a shot, so. Is that what you're thinking, Rod?
Yeah, well, I hadn't even thought about, geese are the only thing that really do damage. I mean, I've seen geese land on a wheat field, and the wheat literally is gone in a couple days.
Well, we had a family that we know here in town that owns some land, 14th and Spencer area, and they have a huge vegetable garden. They sell it to support their son's Special Olympics funds, and they've had a problem with deer out there.
Yeah.
And when we changed the ordinance with the hunting stuff, it kind of limited them. They can't do anything now. And so, bow hunting, the city of Wichita allows bow hunting in the city limits.
Yeah.
So, obviously you can't bow hunt geese, but bow hunting or,
You're really good, you might be able to.
I would rather have you shoot a shotgun than shoot arrows slinging through the air. But, I think that's what I would lean to if we did the ordinance route, was if there was specific stipulations in there. Obviously, we don't want somebody hunting in their backyard, because they say there's a nuisance, but if there's, you know, setbacks with feet or something like that from property lines or residential housing or something to that effect, that,
Okay, I don't know that we can bring an ordinance back in the next meeting, but we can surely bring an overview of the issues and possible
Sure.
alternatives for you to consider. Is that
I mean,
fair?
that's just a direction, yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
time-wise.
Sure.
That good?
Are you thinking geese only or any
Oh, well, I
kind?
think other animals can be nuisances too, so I'm not geese only.
Okay,
I'm firearm only, certain firearms
okay,
and setbacks, yeah, or certain calibers or gauges. Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah. Well, okay, so you do some work on that and bring it back to us at a later date, and then we will consider that. Thanks, Ron.
Yeah, we're probably gonna need a motion to table, please.
A motion to table, okay.
Okay, I move that we table this motion.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have tabled it. Okay, next item is the Planning Commission text amendment.
Yeah, I'll get us started here, Commissioners. The first Planning Commission item in your packet is regarding a zoning text amendment for zoning regulations in Article 3 of the new zoning code. And after recently updating the zoning ordinance, staff found and presented several areas that were requiring cleanup, including the following proposed text amendment under paragraph 3.6 of Article 3. And if you're looking in your packet, it's on the very last page. 3.6 is the very last page, and it says use restrictions and limitation for all districts. The primary permitted uses under the first column of the fifth row on page 48 of the zoning ordinance of the I-3 designation in the table of uses of the zoning ordinance is not a waiver of any requirements under any otherwise applicable federal, state, or local laws, regulations, ordinances, except to the extent permitted by any federal, state, or local laws, regulations, or ordinances, or permits pursuant thereto. That language was added as a text amendment to the zoning ordinance, and the purpose of this was to provide clarification that all existing regulations like nuisance codes still apply. The North Newton Area Planning Commission considered this text amendment to the ordinance at their meeting on December 5th, and they conducted a public hearing, and this passed 5-1 at the Planning Commission meeting, and now it's here for you, for your consideration. I would stand for any questions.
This is just a simple motion to receive the recommendation, right?
I'll make a motion that we receive the recommendation of the Planning Commission.
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it is passed. Then we will have to consider an ordinance.
Me?
Okay, that ordinance would be 5105-22.
I move we approve ordinance 5105-22.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Gotcha. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is passed.
Okay.
And next is the Planning Commission plat amendment for Tyndall.
Yes, and I think we may have a picture on the screen, if you will, of the Tyndall edition. And this is, you're kind of looking at this sideways. North is to the right on the screen. And this is a text amendment for the Tyndall edition plat specifically. And this is located at the corner, it would be the southwest corner of Southeast 12th and Hillside. That's where the Tyndall edition is located. And the property contains approximately 234 acres and it's zoned I-2. The text amendment to Reserve A, which is the area along the west edge. There you go. Kelly's running the cursor along there. Reserve A, there is text amendment when there's any specific, in this instance, Reserve A was intended for drainage and a few other purposes. And then there's a written description of what's allowed in Reserve A on the plat itself. And there were some changes to the text, and the new text would read, Reserve A is hereby reserved for a railroad track crossing, outdoor storage, lakes, drainage structures, utilities, and equipment related thereto, confined to easements and access and/or service roads constructed in accordance with any building permit lawfully issued by the city of Newton, Kansas. This change allows for an access road that, under the current language, would not be permitted. And GAF, that is interested in purchasing the property, remember, Tyndall owns the property, the city has an option to purchase, and then GAF has an option to purchase from the city. They have requested this change in this text amendment, and it would be an access road that would cross kind of the T portion there on and go on to Southeast 12th, and then for some equipment that would be related to anything that they might want to be able to put on this reserve, and it's allowed for with this new language. The Planning Commission heard this item as well at their Planning Commission meeting on December 5th, and they approved it, and now it's here for you to consider as well.
I'll make a motion that we receive the recommendation.
I second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is passed. And then we need to consider approval of the text amendment, correct?
Yes.
So once, okay.
Anybody have a motion?
Move that we consider the approval of the text amendment to the Tyndall additional plat.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is passed. Next item, we're going to consider Newton Public Library Construction Project Naming Policy. Suzanne?
Yes, Commissioners. If you recall, in 2021, the City Commission reviewed a draft naming policy for the Newton Public Library. This was including all the rooms within the structure and the exterior spaces that would be associated with the new facility. The CLC group, which is the fundraising arm that was charged with raising the private funds for the library improvement project, used the draft policy when they were considering eligibility for naming rights associated with the financial contributions to the project. Now that the fundraising campaign has seen great success and the construction project is now out to bid, remember, with expectations for awarding bids at your next meeting, December 27th, we need to formalize the policy. The policy that's in your packet, we caught one error on it, and that would be in section 6 under deviations from policy. The wording would state the city commission may deviate from the provisions of this policy upon a determination. I believe the word determination was left out. That such deviation is in the best interest of the library and of the city. Otherwise, this policy was reviewed by the library board, and they approve of this, and the fundraising group has been utilizing this. This is needed for them to be able to move forward, and we're asking for you to consider approval of this evening.
I would move we approve the naming policy for the library construction.
I'll second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed. Now we're going to consider a franchise agreement with Butler Rural Electric for fiber.
Yes, Commissioners, I'll get us started, and then I believe the city attorney may hop in, and we also have a representative from Butler Rural Electric that's here this evening as well. We've discussed this before with franchise agreements and with power districts, remembering that when there is an agency that's providing power, they do have district boundary lines and they can't cross those. But when it comes to fiber, they can go anywhere. And so Butler Rural Electric does provide power to the area on the east side of the city, meaning out by the airport in that area. And they are now, they are branching out a bit and are going to be providing a fiber optic network that would give digital data and/or voice transport via that fiber. And they are asking for a franchise agreement so that they could be putting those types of facilities, meaning that fiber, within our public right-of-way. And in order for them to be able to do that, we have to have a franchise agreement in place. And they are asking that they would be able to include the entire city of Newton. And so once they have the franchise agreement, then they could put that fiber network into anywhere within the public right-of-way. They have to tell us where they're going and what they're doing, but this franchise agreement is the first step in that process. Chris?
Nothing much to add. Matt Mullen in my office does good work, and he did the heavy lifting on this one. He noted in the memo that it does include a most favored municipality clause, which if Butler Rural to do a similar agreement with another city with different terms, it gives the party the right to renegotiate, and likewise the same for Butler Rural. We've seen that in other franchise agreements we've done. I would stand for any questions, and again, we have a representative that would stand for any questions if you have them.
So 10 years with 3 additional 5 years is pretty standard for these
I believe
franchise
so.
agreements?
Five 5106-22.
I'll make a motion that we approve 5016-22.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is passed. Next item is we're going to consider a second memorandum of agreement to the supplemental agreement with Harvey County.
Mayor, before we proceed, I think Denise might need a signature from you.
Is that you? Did you want to say anything? You can send us an email through your internet. Thank you. Competition.
Thank you.
All right.
It's never bad, right? Okay, let's move on to item 16. Chris?
Yeah, I can cover this one. This is an agreement with the county. It relates back to a 2010 interlocal that the city and county entered into. And that interlocal covered the development of the KLP. Included in the description of what is the KLP includes the Tyndall site, which the city has an option to purchase and GAF has an option to purchase from the city. Essentially, because the original interlocal's on file with the Register of Deeds and includes a legal description that includes the Tyndall site, it's something that does hit on the title for Tyndall. For GAF in doing their due diligence period for their option to purchase, they've asked that this interlocal no longer include that area if they close on the agreement. City's agreeable to that. The county has considered it as well, and they considered it this morning and approved it. So it's contingent on 2 things. One would be you guys approving this agreement before you tonight, and then that property closing. Other items on this, we have done a subsequent agreement since the 2010, as you recall, and that's included in your agenda packet. And that just basically clarified the city and county's role as partners on this and the net proceeds being shared on the sale of that property. So I would stand for any questions on this, but essentially staff has no objections to it, no problem.
So you need us to consider it and then
Just approving the agreement is excellent.
The amendment.
I move that we approve the second memorandum of agreement.
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now, item 17, we're going to continue the discussion from the October 11 work session regarding an independently elected mayor for the city of Newton and determine the city commission's desired next steps.
Yes, Commissioners, I will start out just with a brief recap. To Mayor's point, you may recall on October 11th, you held a work session. It was hosted by Kathy Sexton, who is the longtime Derby City Manager, and also John Nalbandian, who is the Professor Emeritus for the KU Public Management Center. He has also been a member of the Lawrence City Council and served mayor. Lawrence has a similar setup to you all, where they rotate that position. They have been having some extended discussions in Lawrence for several years about changing that, just as you have been talking about it for 18, 24 months now, off and on. We decided you asked for that work session because it had come up also in some of the comments from the 2020 community survey. And there was questions like, we are unique and we're Newton and we need to do it the right way for Newton, but is there some value to considering a longer term for the mayor? So you heard information at your work session, and we just wanted to make sure we were following up with you. We have a couple of alternatives. Just again, as a recap, right now, you all, 3 of you are elected every other year. The top 2 vote getters get the 4-year term, and the third one gets a 2-year term. And then you all decide typically on who is the highest vote getter. That person would be the incoming vice mayor and then mayor for the upcoming years. There has been discussion about, this evening when Commissioner Kane was appointed as mayor for the next year. That is a policy decision you guys can make, whether it's a year or a 2-year term. That is up to you guys at the bench. If you did want to go to an independently elected mayor, it could be a 2-year term, could be a 4-year term. Staff's recommendation would be maybe to a similar setup in other communities typically, so that you still have an odd number of individuals up at each election, perhaps consider a 2-year term for the mayor, and then you would still have 2 commissioners elected at large for the city every 2 years, as well as the mayor. So that way you'd still have that setup. You could do a 4-year term, and then so every other election cycle there would be 2 commissioners and a mayor up versus 2 commissioners at the next election. That's an opportunity. If you wish to do an independently elected mayor, it will take a change to the city's charter ordinance. And what that means is that you all could make a motion to do that, should you so desire. And then there would be a protest period. Typically, I believe it's 60 days, correct? Yeah, 60 days, want to make sure. If no one files a protest petition against it, requesting that it would go to a vote of the people and not just be decided at the bench. If no one should file that protest petition, it becomes law and the charter ordinance is changed. If somebody does, like I said, it can go to a vote of the people. You all can make that decision that you want it to go to a vote of the people. That is an option as well. We did recently contract with a unique survey company that is turning around 1 or 2 question surveys for us in a fairly quick manner, and it is accessible to residents. They can sign up for it. We can push it out. We can go through utility customers. We can target specific areas of town should we so desire. And we wondered if you might want to consider perhaps utilizing this survey. That could be something we could put out and get you some scientifically accurate data in a timely manner, I would say. About 4 weeks, I believe, is what they've told us in the past. 48 hours. Right, but about 4 weeks to put the survey together and have the questions worded appropriately and sent out, and then leave it open, and then, I'm sorry, am I mistaken? I think it depends on the topic too, I'm sure. Yeah, it depends. Okay, but it could be turned around in a fairly quick manner. And to Aaron's point, it could come, the information once the survey closes could come back to you in about 48 hours even. So that would be an option. I think Mayor has mentioned, Commissioner McBroom has mentioned in the past, it would be wonderful to have that kind of data, especially from the city at large, to help us understand, is this something the community wants to do, would be interested in? However, it is going to take quite the context. So we would need some educational information up front you would read through so that you understand our current system, and then whatever system you are wanting to ask the change might be made to a 2-year mayor, a 4-year mayor, those kinds of things. So we just wanted to bring this back to you for discussion, follow up, and if you all can kind of give us a consensus on a direction you'd like to go, or this is your chance to continue that discussion, whatever you would desire, and we're happy to do whatever you would like as staff. We just need you to give us a little bit more direction. And of course, it is always an option to take no action as well and remain doing things like we do it now. That's always an option too.
I'll start the conversation, and I think I was the one originally that brought this idea up and just started the conversation. And then city staff has put a lot of time into it. And I just want to say to the other commissioners that if there's not an interest, let's not expend any time or resources on doing a survey and all that. I mean, it's fine, just let it go tonight. From what I think we've talked about, that seems to be the consensus. So I'm saying don't push it forward and go through the survey just to come back. And if I'm the only one that has an interest in it, I'm saying it, I mean, I've heard from 2 citizens now that have said, don't change it. I've heard from others that say change it. And so, 2 people, 4 people is not a good survey number, but I'm just saying I've heard both. And And if the other four are not in agreement, let's not spend any money on it or any time on putting a survey together and doing it. Let's expend our resources somewhere else that's more beneficial, so.
I sure see the benefit of having a mayor that is allowed to plan for more than just 1 year, especially if they're fairly new. I mean, you know, if they're elected and they're the highest vote getter, then they have a year of kind of being a city commissioner, and then the second year, they're the vice mayor, and then the third year, they're the mayor. And, you know, I mean, they're the mayor for a year. It's pretty hard to, you know, to cut wood and get it all burned, you know, within that short period of time. So I would be for a survey. I'm wondering if there's a way that you couldn't, you know, before they can vote, because they don't usually, a lot of people don't read enough to really get the full. Is there a way you can like do a video and explain it before they can vote? Then they click on the next deal and vote? And then that way they kind of have to watch and see what their alternatives are. I mean, I'm even guilty sometimes of skim reading when I maybe should read it with a little bit more depth, but I'm not sure how valuable the data is going to be if, like you said, I mean, you're going to have that much written just to explain how it is, and I think that's going to push people away from wanting to vote. So if the data is useful, I mean, I'm always for gathering data, but
I will say I'm still a fan of changing it. Just I don't want us to go through the process if at the end of the day it's
I
not
could
gonna
vote
happen.
for changing it to a 2 or a 4 year.
Yeah.
I'm kind of, you know, you said 2 year last time you and I talked personally, and I thought maybe 4 year. But if someone's really good, you know, then the problem is if you elect a bad mayor, you're stuck with them for 4 years.
Yeah.
Unless they go out there and are getting close to Ron's geese and getting away. But the 2 year is probably more appealing to me.
Well, yeah, conversely, if it's 2 years and you have a really good 2-year mayor and he runs again, he'll get reelected.
He will get
And then
reelected,
So you'll still get the 4 years
So I
out.
think that's to me, that makes the most sense.
Is the survey the most effective way to get the feed? And I agree with what you said, Ron, about you get too much length in there and some people just don't want to take the time to read it.
Yeah.
I agree with that. But because I really believe we need to get the feedback from the citizens, what do they, how do they feel? You know, if only 20% of the citizens want to do that, well then why should we pursue it? But is that what I'm getting to is the survey the most effective way? Is that what your thoughts are?
It might be the most timely manner way to do something. Again, I'm trying to think of a time we recently did this, and I think it was this commission at the bench. I'm trying to remember a time we actually sent something that it was a change to the charter ordinance, and it was petitioned, and it did go to the vote of people when we changed Sunday liquor sales. You recall that? Mm-hmm. So, you know, there was a petition brought forward, the city attorney validated those signatures through the petitioning process, and it did go on to a ballot. So that, again, you guys, you don't have to have a petition. You could say, we want to put it on the next general election, and the people could decide that way. And if they vote it down, then it stays the same. That's an option.
Even the wording for that would be difficult.
Ballot wording is always tricky because it has to be very explicitly laid out in a certain manner. So the survey's probably going to be more language friendly than it would be on the ballot, would be my guess.
Yeah, and I think you would have to wait till the election year that the commission is up. You couldn't do it at the general election it would have to be on an odd year, so you have a year to figure it out.
What's the cost of the survey?
It was about $7,500 annually, and we can use it for multiple.
So there's, okay.
We've already incurred that expense.
Yeah, well, we will, yeah. We've just signed the agreement because we know that there are sometimes things that come up that we need information in a more timely manner, and sometimes they're very topic specific
And
like
it gives
this.
us a couple surveys.
It's just a
year or
tool, yeah,
whatever.
up to
Up to
six in a
six.
year.
I would be for asking the question of the community.
I would too.
try to figure out how to.
on a survey. Yep, we can work on, yeah, we will let our wonderful Director of
I
Communications
like
work
the
the wording
idea
magic.
of a video, and I like the idea of not being able to vote until you at least watch the length of the video. Some people will mute it. But is that a possibility? Because sometimes, like, you can't go to the next question until you complete this. Like, there's agreements, you have to scroll all the way through.
Right, like the terms of service when you
Yeah,
get your
no
cell
one
phone
reads
bill
those,
or
but
something,
yeah,
yeah, but you
yeah.
can't go forward until you at
You
least
have to
scroll
watch
through.
Aaron's TikTok before you can vote.
Yeah.
I will just add, I'm really comfortable with the way we are doing it. I figure with the election and the three commissioners that are elected, the top vote getter got those votes for a reason. And I'm not opposed to having that top vote getter be the mayor for 2 years until the next election. Because it's just pretty indicative of where the public is when they voted, that top vote getter is the one that received the most votes. So I'm good with that.
Sure. And if it's helpful for context for the public or for those who are newer to our community, we do have a precedent for that. You may recall, I believe it was Mayor Heck, Willis Heck, under the current system you have now, was elected to multiple year terms for multiple reasons. And so there is a precedent for that too, if you kept it the same and just made a policy choice to do 2 years versus one, or just next year, Commissioner Kane someone at the same time next year could say, we elect him for another year, to your point, ma'am. That's an option as well, but that's a policy choice, wouldn't have to go to a vote of the people, no referendums, no charter ordinance change, all of those things. And all these things just take time because of the waiting periods and things, so we want to make sure we're doing what at least a majority of you wish to do. I'm hearing several of you say we'd like to have the survey. I'm seeing head nods at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd do the survey.
Okay. We'll see what information we have back from the survey, and maybe that will help us make a more informed decision in next steps. We'll get working on that. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have a new business item.
Yes. We received, if you remember, you authorized me paying $1,200,000 on an extra principal payment for our plant upgrade loan. And that did go through. They accepted the money. And so we have amendment number 6, and we have a new amortization schedule, but we need to accept that and sign off on it. It did lower our payments by about $100,000 a year.
Well, every
Now
little bit
it's
helps, right?
About $678,000 a year for that, instead of the $790 we're paying this past year.
Good. So we just need a simple motion to approve
Yes.
and accept that.
Motion to take it up as a new business item, first of all.
Okay?
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we accept a new business item for tonight.
I
Second.
second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Now can we go ahead and vote on it, or? Okay. Now we can entertain a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion that we approve the new schedule.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is done.
Thank you.
Next item is Citizens Forum. We have Mr. Solomon. Come on up and state your name and.
Good evening. My name's Joe Solomon. I live at 219 Sheffield Street here in Newton. I'm here more as concerned and curiosity to the fact that Mastercraft is closing. My curiosity and concern is, what is that going to do to our tax base? Because in the end, how much is that based on our tax base through the city? How much do we get generated from them, from water, taxes, whatever else, the employees that we get taxes through paychecks, all that? So with them moving out, what is that going to do to the current taxpayers? Are we going to expect a big jump in our property taxes next year, or what? Is there anybody doing any analyzation of it or anything right now?
Yes. And I'd be happy to speak to some of your questions, and if it'd be helpful, and also that's a great opportunity for me to be able to speak to the public about that, yeah. So,
Sounds good.
we come from the developers world, and we always say the best business is the one you already have. And we want to take care, we love welcoming new businesses to our community and creating new jobs, but we want to make sure we're taking good care of our current workforce, our residents, and our businesses. So if I may start with your question about the tax base, even if the buildings are vacant and are, blacked out, so to speak, not using electricity, the property owner is still required to pay taxes at the current rate. And we have actually already had several people approach, I say us, the city, although the city obviously does not own those buildings, but we as the development team, and I know the EDC has been approached as well, with people who are wanting to know what is the company planning for those facilities, and are they already available for sale? So the good news is we already had interest. We know we've had a shortage of especially manufacturing type facilities for a number of years now, and so there's always been this higher demand, especially for recently renovated buildings. The company that bought out what used to be Mid-Continent is a larger nationwide company, or at least a regional company, and owns multiple locations. So they have expressed, when we asked them, at this point in time, they're not ready to say if they're selling the buildings or if they're, and when. So we're trying to make sure that those people inquiring are getting back in touch with the property owners and with the businesses to make sure. To your point, sir, there were about 450-ish to 500 people, I believe, that were employed at the time. And through federal law, all employees that are, if a facility is shutting down, they're required by federal workforce law to issue what is called a WARN notice, W-A-R-N, and every employer gets that. The city is notified, the county is notified, the school district, all the taxing entities that this is coming, and they, by law, as a company, have to give 60 days notice to their employees, which is why, if you heard, when this story broke last week or week before, but those employees will be kept on until February 15th-ish. Now, they can leave earlier if they find another job, which is what we hope. We did have a job fair last Friday, and there were between I'm looking at Zach here, 35 to 40 employers that showed up looking for help, and most of them are right here, and not just in Newton, but in the region. I know, like Stanley Black & Decker.
Almost 80.
Yeah, 80. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, last I had heard, and they hosted that job fair on site. And also, again, as part of the federal workforce money, there's something called rapid response, and that does not cost the citizens anything because it's a federally sponsored program. And they come in, the rapid response team come in and meet with all the employees in groups or individually, help them figure out how do they negotiate applying for another job, get them to the workforce center. They help them with resumes. They can do job search one-on-one if they couldn't get to the job fair or didn't want to, or change of skill set. They also will help them negotiate the unemployment system and how do you get unemployment insurance for your family should you need it, state assistance programs. So that stuff has all been happening already. Like I said, we're trying very hard to take care of our own community very much so. But to your point, sir, it will have an impact on our community. We are hopeful that sometimes when these things happen, the silver lining is because those are manufacturing jobs and they pay a little bit lower wage. Sometimes this is an opportunity for somebody to advance a little bit, and perhaps if they move on to one of these companies that pay just a little bit higher wage, same type of work, but again, keeping them in the area. Is that helpful context from a 30,000 foot?
That's a 30,000 foot.
Absolutely.
Will you guys put something out later saying more precise what's going to be happening?
You betcha. And as we get closer to that February 15th date, the company will be required to share some more of that type of information, especially if they are willing to release publicly plans for the buildings and such.
Has anybody looked in to see how that's going to affect the school district and students?
I don't know I couldn't speak to students, sir. I'm sorry. I don't know how many of those individuals have children in our
Children,
district. Yeah.
Because that'll have an impact on the economy here too.
Absolutely. You betcha. Yeah.
Anyway, at least it tells me you're looking into it. And
Yeah, we are
that's why-
trying, and not just us, not just the city, like I said, the Economic Development Council and the Workforce Services, and so we're trying to get these wraparound services in place for them as quickly as possible.
Well, part of it, I know you guys have a lot of agendas you're trying to get accomplished, so how is that going to affect all those agendas in the future if you're losing tax revenue?
Yeah, great questions,
That-
yeah.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, great questions. Thank you very much for that
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thanks, Joe. And hopefully, as time goes on, we can slowly start getting the numbers as they come in about how many of these employees have been hired by other companies.
We will start to get
So-
that, yeah,
so-
especially.
So we will know. Okay, next person that signed up is Ed Meyer.
Well, when I first heard that you were even considering raising the water rates.
Could you state your name and your address?
Oh, I'm Ed Myers. I live at 9th and
Okay,
Spencer.
thank you.
when you even would consider raising water rates, I thought, gosh, you guys are poking the hornet's nest. That's crazy. First of all, I'd like to ask you, I was told maybe 5 years ago, when the bonds were going to be paid off, our water rates would go down. When are the bonds going to be paid off? My question.
Currently 2026.
That's what I heard originally, 2026. So this was something that I think a lot of people in Newton were hoping for, that the water rates would go down in 2026. We had that to look forward to because they're pretty damn high now. And now you're even talking about raising the water rates? Crazy. Crazy. I mean, look, I saw this brochure out there in the lobby. It says, choose Newton, choose Newton. You just raised the property tax 8 mills. Now you're talking about raising the water rates, which is a tax, according to the Supreme Court. When you have a monopoly and you're forced people to pay more, that is a tax. So this is just totally crazy to me, even thinking about talking about it. First of all, I'd like to mention about myself. I have a garden. I have a pretty good sized garden. And the garden I use city water because I'm not fortunate to have a well where I live. And my garden is big enough that I can feed other couples, either other people in town that have low incomes. Now, if you raise the water rates, I won't be able to have my garden anymore. I can't afford to have it. So that's just from a personal point. I would like to ask you as commissioners, if you decide to run again, how is your platform going to speak? I raised the property tax, then I raised the water rates, which is I raised the water tax. Please elect me. Do you think that's going to be a great platform at the next election? Think about that if you want another job again. Because this is when you talk about raising the water rates, this is going to be a big, big issue in this city. Because I know a lot of people that complain all the time about Newton's water is so high, we can't afford to even hardly take a shower more than once a week. So the other issue would be we have that industrial park on the southeast part of town here that's been empty for years. We have roads to nowhere. We ought to talk about being able to have people choose Newton and encourage them to come because of our water rates are competitive and lower, possibly than a lot of cities around us. So anyway, the whole idea of even considering raising this other tax is crazy. I mean, I thought, when I heard about it, I thought, man, these people need to have their head examined. Everybody in town thinks the water rates are too high, and you're talking about raising taxes again? Think about that.
Well, we are going to continue the discussion in January. I think we're going to have a work session.
Correct, yes.
And we're going to look at things from all angles because, as we all know, prices have increased for all of us, and we don't want to raise the rates any more than anybody else does, but we have to have the conversation. So, Mayor Braun from North Newton is here. Did you want to say some words tonight?
I don't need to, but I can always say a few words.
Well, why don't you get up and sure.
You got to tell us who you are and where you live.
Ron Braun, Mayor, City of North Newton. I just wanted to say in response to your discussion about future mayor 2-year, 4-year, or continuing as you are. I think that if you consider the effectiveness and the continuity of what an elected mayor provides, people can count on for 2 years or 4 years, someone, to go to. It's none of my business, but I would certainly say it works well for a lot of cities. And if you do that, then it's easy to promote that you're doing it because you want more effective government. You want to provide continuity to the citizens, and you just want to be effective in your efforts of governance. So that's all I would say, that there are benefits of doing that should you decide to go that way. So it's not a negative as much as you think about all the marketing things and the education you would have to do. Market the positive sides of that, and I'm sure you can think of more. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it is time to go around the horn. Mr. Rich.
Former Mayor, Commissioner McBroom, thank you for your service over this past year. Congratulations, Mayor. Thank you, staff, for all your hard work. I know we've put you through the ringer these last few weeks of the year, and thank you.
Me. Yeah, thanks for, the last year. It's been fun. It's been enjoyable. I think it will go down as probably one of the most memorable years of my life, at least up until this point. I get the pleasure in my line of work to celebrate the end of a life with a lot of families. And one question I always ask is, what is one of the biggest highlights of that person's life that's worth sharing? And I hope in the future my family would share that this year would be one of the big ones. I really enjoyed it. So it's been fun. And, we're coming on the end of 3 years. We just have a whole nother year, Rich. Kathy, you have another year too, and you've been here longer than us. But I just think 4 years is a long time to spend with people a couple times, a month, and if not, at least once or twice a week. So, and to the city staff, I have really enjoyed getting to know all of you, and we have another year together, of course. I'm saying like this is a goodbye or something. It's not. But just in the end of this term, at least, I think when I got hired at the high school, my funnest thing to do was to, somebody would say, he's the mayor of Newton, and the response was almost 100% of the time, are you really the mayor of Newton? And somehow it got changed on Wikipedia. And of course, that was my favorite thing to do, was to pull up Wikipedia and say, look, it says right here. And they would go, wow. I'll leave it there.
And to echo those sentiments, we really appreciate Commissioner McBroom really took one for the Team W this year because it was our 150th. And so he had to do a lot more unique celebrations and those kinds of things. And so we really appreciate the time and energy that you gave to us, because we know it's always a lot more as mayor than it is as commissioner, but this was a double whammy. And so we really appreciate the fact that you gave us your time and energy, because I know it took away from your professional life and your family too. And so we always appreciate that you guys are willing to serve. A couple quick reminders: the upcoming Christmas holidays, city will be closed on the 23rd, which is Friday, and also the 26th, which is Monday, because Christmas Eve and Christmas Day fall on Saturday, Sunday. So we'll make sure we get information out to anyone that might be affected, whether that's utility, trash pickup, those kinds of things. Remember that your next meeting, December 27th, that's the normal meeting day. However, we're meeting at noon instead of 7 p.m., so just recall that. Thursday of this week, a reminder, this is the South Central Kansas Legislative Delegation's annual meeting. It's at Wichita State Thursday afternoon. I and a whole bunch of other people will be making presentations to them about local legislative issues, whether that, a lot for us it is workforce, and it has to do with training and grant funding for infrastructure projects from that federal legislation that's coming down. I will be speaking on passenger rail, which you all know is one of my favorite topics to spend time on. And so they will also be electing their leadership there. So I will report back to you after Thursday evening and let you know how that leadership election turns out. And then just on that same vein, January 9th is the start of that 2023 legislative session. That's the first day they'll be in Topeka. And that's important to us because we are anticipating several local government bills coming up this session, and we will keep a close eye on that through our partners at REAP and the other regional entities that have paid lobbyists there that keep an eye on all those things for us. So thank you much.
No, sir, thank you.
No, sir.
Well, I thank our first responders for being here. Witnessed some work going on with an ambulance and a fire truck just real close to when I was coming down the street to get here. So I was just thanking God for their service and their care for those in our community. And then our staff, the city staff, you have gone beyond for this commission in the last few weeks, and we're very grateful for all that you do. You put together and you do it like this. And we appreciate your expertise. I can speak for myself. We appreciate your expertise and your direction so that we might make the very best decisions for this community. So thank you.
I just want to wish the staff and all the citizens of Newton a very Merry Christmas. The Christmas time's going to come and go before we see each other again at the bench. And I want to say a special thank you to Mayor Braun and City Manager Kyle Fiedler from North Newton for their support on the GAF project that we're working on. And it's great when your neighbors show up to help out, and I appreciate it beyond belief. Looking forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, I would like to echo that too, that, you know, our two communities we're attached at the hip, so to speak, and we want to be good neighbors to each other and help each other on projects and initiatives as we both look to the future and how we want to grow or not grow. So, yeah, I appreciate both of you being here. I also, again, Clint, I really want to say what a good job I thought you did this last year, and it does take a lot of extra time, but it is well worth it. I remember the first time that I got elected, and I was vice mayor that very first year, and then mayor the year after. It seems like, and I'm sure you can attest to this, you're halfway through the year before you get your bearings about you as being mayor, and you're just kind of wondering how to do this. And so I do see some positives in having a 2 or 4 year term where you have a period of time, not just 1 year. And even though this is my 3rd time, I mean, I'm a little more experienced now, and I'm very humbled, by the way, by all of your support for me to be in this position. But back to that first year, yeah, it's kind of daunting the first time that you do it. And but it is very enjoyable because you know what? This city, I don't care what anybody says. We've got the best city in the state of Kansas, and I'll take that to the bank. So this meeting is adjourned.